With a general description, candid reader, of the whole globe of the earth and its four parts according to the order of nature, methodically repeated and prefaced, I determined, in imitation of Ptolemy's cosmographers, to begin this particular geography of mine, proceeding from the pole itself and the regions surrounding it, descending from the highest to the lowest, and advancing from the left to the right, gradually wedding the northern with the southern, and the western with the eastern, that it may be happy and prosperous for me and for the Christian state. Thus I pray and offer this work to the Most High God. The pole is said to be the extremity of the axis, that is, the line drawn through the center of the globe. Apoton polein, from turning in Greek, called in Latin vertex. There are two of these poles, the northern and southern. It is the northern which is always seen towards Borea, and it is therefore called boreal or arctic. The southern pole, which appears towards the southern sun, is therefore called austral, nodal, or antarctic. Of the poles, Pliny states, "As the earth is the center of the heavens from the two vertices, which are termed poles, these are also the standard bearers, sitting obliquely between them." And thus, concerning the nature of the poles here, just these few words must suffice in this place. Let us now to the islands surrounding the Arctic. These are the Greenland, Frisland, Nova Zembla, and a few other lands, which we shall also deal, as briefly as much is known. Greenland, which takes its name from its vegetation, is an island largely still unknown. It is situated between the Arctic Circle and the Pole. Its most extreme parallels are from 65 degrees north latitude on its southern tip to 77 degrees on the northern. In this island, if we are to believe Nicholas Zenato, who in the year 1380 was agitated by various crossings in the nearby sea, there is a continuous winter of 9 months, during which it does not rain, nor does the snow at the beginning of winter ever melt before its end. And yet the grass is unharmed. For the production of grass and fodder is most remarkable here. There is also a wonderful abundance of cattle and dairy, owing to the remarkable abundance of fodder. So much so that they put together huge piles of butter and cheese, which are set out for sale to the sailors. There are only 2 dwellings known to us in Greenland, the convents of Alba and St. Thomas, of which we shall speak shortly. The southern flowing rivers in Greenland are the Thor, the Boer, the Naf, and the Landex. The western rivers are the Aver, the Nisse, Ham, and Fiste. The northern rivers are the Feder and the Dever. Greenland is lapped by the Lazy Sea, which is also called Sea of Ice or Sea of Concrete. Pliny, in Book 4, Chapter 13, speaks thus of the sea. Hecataeus calls the northern ocean Amalkia, from the river Paropnesus, by which Scythia was fed, because that name means frozen in the language of the people. Philemon states that it is called Moramarusa by the Cimbri, that is, Sea of Death, as far as the red promontories, and beyond them, Cronius. There is in Greenland a monastery of the order of the Predicators, not far from it a fiery mountain like Aetna, at the foot of which is a perennial spring, by whose steaming waters not only all the dwellings of that monastery are heated with a hypocaust, but also bread and food are cooked using no other means. The whole structure of the monastery is made up of stones, which the same mountain burns in the midst of flames. For the outer crust of these rocks is softened by the application of water, so that stones placed on top of the rocks are glued together as if by the most tenacious bitumen. The same fountains also warm the neighboring gardens, so that they are perpetually smiling with a variety of flowers and herbs. Even the nearest tract of sea, by the influence of these waters, never freezes over, but is always open to fish and men. Hence there is such a confluence of water and fish from the colder places that not only these monks, but also the surrounding acolytes, have a pleasant place to live. There are also on this island 2 episcopal seats under the ordination of the Archbishop of Nidrosia, which is the metropolis of Norway. The inhabitants here are by their nature addicted to magic spells. They use their magical arts and charms to stop the storms of the sea and to render inert the weapons of foreign ships, which they are about to prey on. As far as some of them might judge the ships of the unscrupulous, those who utilize navigation, laboring in this way, they are yet admired by others. They are for the greater part Christians, most of whom have been faithful, but owing to the nomadic pastoral lifestyle, many also have relapsed into idolatry. Frisland is an island entirely unknown to the ancients, yet a landmass larger than Ireland, and even greater beneath the sky's cruelty. The inhabitants here have no crops, but they eat mostly well on fish. Its chief town has the same name as the island, and is subject to the Kingdom of Norway. The inhabitants here do most of their business by fishing, for in its port such a quantity of fish of every kind is caught that many ships are laden with them, with which they are carried to the surrounding islands. As Ziegler writes, "The same sea next to this island from the west is full of shoals and rocks. It is called Icarius." He writes that they call the island Icaria in their own language. This island began to be known again in our time under the auspices of the English. The land of Nova Zembla is situated at a latitude of 76 degrees. Here the air is extremely harsh, and the cold is intolerable and intense. It is a deserted, wild, harsh, and troublesome region. Neither leaves nor grass are able to grow here. Also no animals are to be found except carnivores, such as foxes and bears, of which there is an abundance not only on this island, but in most of the northern coastal regions. There are also sea cows, which they call walruschen. These are quite robust monsters, such that they occasionally overturn fishermen's boats. These beasts are more massive than oxen, but living in the sea, they are endowed with skin like seals, with short hairs, with a lion's grin, and they are seen standing on the ice. They are quadrupedal. They have no ears, and they are killed with great difficulty, except only when their head is first bruised. They do give birth to 1 or 2 pups. Here are the straits, the Weigats, the Forbisser, and Davis. The Strait of Weigats extends from Ortus as far as the quarter called Krukis, then to Arctopeliot as far as the corner of Decidius, turning a little towards the east. On the southern continental side of the Weigats, William Bernard found some native people called the Samuta. The form of the dress which they use is similar to that which our painters attribute to wild men, yet they are by no means savage, but endowed with a good intelligence. They cover themselves with the skins of reindeer from head to foot. For the most part they are short in body, broad and flat in the face, with small eyes, short and splayed legs, such that they are most agile in running and jumping. They have sleds, to which they attach 1 or 2 reindeer, which draw 1 or 2 mounted men at such a rapid pace that none of our horses can match them. The Strait of Forbisser took its name from Martinus Forbisser, an Englishman who, in the year 1577, seeking a passage to Cathay through the north, had reached a certain strait which he found both islands and a large number of people, of which we will describe a few. The people of this place, free from all foreign influence, feed on the flesh of wild beasts and fish. They clothe themselves in the skins of beasts caught in the hunt, and it is their custom to devour the raw herbs of the fields as well. Their tents are covered with the skins of whales, as there are perpetual clouds and the harshest cold in this place. The dogs of this region, which bear resemblance to our wolves, are put under the yoke and used to transport their necessary things over the ice. Their weapons are bows, arrows, and slings. They are quite fond of shiny and tinkling things. What religion they worship, or what knowledge of God they might have, is unknown. There is no wood here, but many deer. As the land is barren of agriculture, the people are generally dull, slow, and without much intelligence. They do not worship the earth, being content with what it produces of its own accord. They live by hunting and gathering. Their drink is the blood of wild beasts, or else the water of ice. There are no rivers, no springs, because the force of the cold so closes the earth that no spring of water can break out. The people are very laborious. They are active hunters, and most cunning, especially in hunting. They employ a certain kind of boat made of skins, in which there is only room for one hunter, who needs only a single oar, and in the right hand he holds the instrument by which the weapon is slung. An example of this was seen in England, where a man whom Forbisser had brought with him hence, to the astonishment of all, caught swans in this manner, which had been granted to him by the Queen. And when he had seen Forbisser, the piper of Bristol, mounting his horse, the man wanted as well to mount one himself. But he sat on the horse with his face turned towards the tail, not without the great laughter and pleasure of the onlookers. The Strait of Davis similarly received its name from John Davis, an Englishman, who in the year 1585 sailed around the two nearer coasts of America, or rather around Greenland, from the 53rd to the 75th degree northern latitude, in his attempt to find a crossing to China, and so he diligently mapped this coastline. Now, what you see about the four Euripoeans, or northern rivers, on the map, are taken from the itinerary of one James Noxon of Buscoduc, who relates, which, however, he says he received first from another, that a certain English mathematician from Oxford once described the four lands around the pole, and measured them with an astrolabe in approximately the following forms, as I, Mercator, have gathered from James. He says that the four Euripoeans were carried away by such a rush to the inner abyss that any ships, once they had entered, could not be driven back by any wind, nor had there ever been enough there to turn a corn-mill around. But these things do not seem to be absent from Lucian's true narratives, when those who surveyed the places where the Euripides are said to have been, they found none of them, that is, those Hollanders who found the sea to be open to the 81st degree of latitude. And of the most northern people, Mela writes thus: On the Asiatic coast lie the first Hyperboreans beyond the north, and above the Euripos mountains, beneath the very pivot of the stars, where the sun does not rise every day, as we do, but first rises at the spring equinox, and then finally sets at the autumnal, so that a single day there is 6 months. The land is narrow, sunny, fertile in itself, and the dwellers are most righteous, living longer and happier than any other mortals. When at festival, they are always in happy leisure, neither stirring up wars, nor even quarreling among themselves. They are said to have performed sacred works, especially to Apollo, whose first fruits Delon sent through his virgins, then through the peoples from time to time, passing them on to others. And it is reported that they kept this custom for a long time, until it was swept away by the vices of other nations. They live in woods and forests, and when the satisfaction of life has seized them, rather than weariness, then they cheerfully, having redeemed themselves, throw themselves into the sea from a certain rock, and this is a great funeral ritual for them. And Hecataeus once wrote a special book about these Hyperborean peoples, and was quoted by Pliny in his 6th book, chapter 17, who also describes most of this nation similar to Mela, as was quoted from Pliny by Solinus, all of whom confirm the truth of the opinion with the faith of the most approved authors. And what Mela, Pliny, and Solinus relate about the virgins going from these places to Delos, This story is also passed down by Herodotus, who in his 4th book describes their journey. Paul Jovius, in his description of Moscow, also has the following. On the extreme shore of the ocean, where the vast kingdoms of Norway and Sweden adhere to a certain continent by an isthmus, there exist the Lapps, a nation beyond belief, wild, suspicious, and most evasive of the sight of any foreign man or ship. They know neither crops, nor apples, nor any kindness at all, either of earth or of heaven. They prepare their food with only skill in archery, and clothe themselves with the backs of wild beasts. The dwellings of the tribe are caverns filled with dried leaves, or the hollows of tree trunks which have been made either by fire introduced into them, or by decay brought on by age itself. Some, at the sea, when there is a great catch of fish, they catch fish with clumsy but successful instruments, and they store the fish cured in smoke in a great granary. The Lapps have a slight body stature, a dirty and bruised countenance, but very swift feet. Not even the nearest Muscovites themselves know of their character. When they are attacked with a small band of foreigners, they say they are insane. But having led the poorer life of all things with great forces, they have neither existed either usefully or gloriously. Beyond the Lapps, in the region between Corum and the far north, oppressed by perpetual darkness, Pygmies were once found. Some witnesses of exceptional faith relate that they, who have grown up to the peak of their height, scarcely exceed the measure of our children's years. A meticulous race of men, expressing their chattering speech so much that they seem both akin to apes, and removed in stature and senses from a man of just stature. Beyond these people there are other extreme nations of men, of whom there is no certain passage of the Muscovites known, when no one came to the ocean but only the fame and pearls themselves, and the fabulous stories of merchants once heard. It is, however, sufficiently certain that the Duidna, drawn by innumerable streams, is carried to the north with great speed, and that the sea there is very vast, so that by taking the coast to the right, unless the land is interposed, it is believed the most certain conjecture that Cathay can be reached by ship. For the rest, concerning the habitation of the Hyperboreans, it is expedient to refer to the most detailed discussions of the philosophers, of which there are some 60 or 70 copies present in the Conciliator. It is also expedient to hear Julius Scaliger, in his 37th volume, writing of the voyage from the Hyperborean Sea towards China. Whether indeed a voyage to China could be established by sea, different arguments have been brought forward on different sides, and variously agreed upon. But these things are our own. From the mouths of the river Duvina, whence they aspire to the course, they wish to extend the whole tract which surrounds the whole of Scythia to its east, in an angular fashion, the bend of which, the septentrional, or the north, should be exchanged with the falconal. It is obvious that those who speak of these matters have much less explored the nature of the sea and winds and the coast. For Zephyrus and Subsolanus are so rare that they are almost unknown there, and the frequency of Aculonus is so great that it seems as if his command of the sky had been legitimately entrusted to him by nature. And endless, blind, muddy ford, a winter which raged for 10 months, as if the surface of the sea were solidified as a floor. In summer, perpetual fog, which is scarcely dispelled in the afternoon hours, and is soon restored. But the danger is 3 times greater from the ice, whose immense floating crusts give the appearance of mobile islands converging on one another. Certe nuperis Battavorum navigationibus anno 1550 nonaginte et sequentibus duobus in haec loca institutis, spes facta est, posse ex mari Hyperboreo ad orientalis orbis horas navibus perveniri, sed difficultur ad modum propter glacium et hibernam noctem. Wilhelmus Bernardi negabat per fretum nasovicum ad sinas instituti navigationem posse, non solum ad glaciem, sed praecipoe quod ex variis observationibus comperit. Non mare illud, sed sinum dum taxat esse, in primis ex eo quod nullum fluxum et refluxum invenirit. Verum spes illi magna fuit per borealissimam, Novae Zemplae partem dictam navigationem perfici posse. Caetarum eum Indies novae navigationes illac ad sinas instituantur, tamen experientia discetur, utrum id perfici possit nec ne. Constatatem naves nostras ad gradum usque octigaginte unum proectas et etianum mare apertum invenisse. Post vero ad gradum septimagintam sextum glaci ei crustis in gentibus ac nocte ingruente impeditas fuisse, ne ultorius progredi possent. Certainly, after the recent Dutch voyages in the year 1594, and the following two established in these places, there was hope it would be possible to reach the eastern shores of the world from the Hyperborean Sea by ships, but with great difficulty because of the ice in the winter night. Wilhelmus Bernardi denied that a voyage could be established through the Strait of Nassau to China, not only because of the ice, but especially because he found from various observations that it was not a sea, but only a gulf. Firstly, because he detected no ebb and flow of tide. It was true that he had great hope of being able to complete the said voyage through the northernmost part of Nova Zembla. For the rest, when new voyages are to be made there to China, at last experience will teach whether it can be accomplished or not. It is documented that our ships have advanced to the 81st degree north, and that they still found the sea open. But after reaching again the 76th degree, they were hindered by huge sheets of ice, so that they could proceed no further. The sun left the sailors on the 4th of November in the year 1596. It was seen again on the 24th of January the following year. All this time the mighty Argonauts hid in Nova Zembla, in a hut built by themselves, until the 14th of June. For it is right to call them such, for although the voyage of the Argonauts was greatly celebrated by the ancients, if, however, it be compared with this latter voyage, the former would be considered a game. For who, before these Hollanders, for a space of 13 months, isolated from all human society, oppressed by the want of all things, endured the most rigid sky and the most intense frosts under the Arctic pole at a height of 76 degrees in the vast wilderness, who built a house in which to retreat, so that he could shelter himself from the harshness of the air? Would he be protected, being buried in them again and again in heavy snow and shut up for nearly 10 whole months? I shall not mention that on the way back they were forced to carry the ship, and the barge was not covered, and they endured these bitter hardships. I am silent about the terrible, ferocious, and enormous bears, and the beautiful sea creatures with whom I have often had to make peace. Nevertheless, they overcame all these hardships, labors, and surprising difficulties with faith and great courage, and not without the kind protection and favor of the divine deity. And so on the 14th day of June, intending to return to the deserted cargo ship, they embarked in 2 small boats, and thus covered nearly 40 miles. They reached as far as the city of Colum in Lapia, having lost several of their comrades along the way.